Hello again, everyone. I am Chris Shura, and this is the Citizen Sports Weekly for Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. Robert Harding and Justin Ritzel are with us. We're going to pick 4 NFL games, but I think maybe what we'll do for our picks is we'll just pick the opposite of who we were going to pick originally, because I think we actually would probably do better if we had been doing that. For those of you scoring at home, which I'm sure there's many of you, we all went 1-3, and I'm the leader at 3-5. I mean, this has been a crazy year for betting for the NFL. I think road underdogs are way above 500 so far this year, which leads me to our takeaways from week 2. I think this is as entertaining a year as we've had in the NFL in recent memory. It's almost like everybody really wanted this year to be good because there's fans allowed back at the games for the first time, and for all parks, not just certain parks or stadiums. All the primetime games, even Monday night's Packers win over the Lions, they've all been entertaining games. And most of them have gone to the wire. And it's weird. It's just like the NFL is the league that, even though they don't get it sometimes, they can't screw it up. And the games have just been amazing. We've had all these great finishes, and I mean, it's just been one great game after another. And yeah, there's been some clunkers, and I can think of a couple of games that come to mind, but overall, it's just been a very entertaining, thrilling beginning, first 2 weeks of the NFL season, and you just hope it continues. I mean, watch Carolina and in Houston put up a great game on Thursday night of all things. But it's just been entertaining. And again, if you're betting on these games for real, then I hope you still have a shirt left, because I'll tell you, it's been tough. So, Robert, your takeaways from week 2.
My big takeaway was from that Ravens Chiefs game, how the Chiefs, as we know in the last season plus, they've liked to play with fire. And of course, they did lose the Super Bowl by a wide margin. But going back to the regular season, really, this is a team that was heavily favored in a lot of games, and we'll get into one particular matchup in a little bit here. But this is a team that didn't play as well as I think people thought, and I think it caught up with them against Baltimore, because when you watch that game, I mean, Baltimore was hanging with them, but they did make some mistakes along the way. It seemed like the Chiefs could have really put it into another gear and taken over that game. That's a banged up Ravens defense right now. They're missing Marcus Peters on the outside. I think they lost one of their safeties during that game. I can't remember if it was for the entire game or at least a good chunk of it. But that's a team that, and they have some new pieces on defense. So it's one of those situations where it might take some time to gel, and plus they're dealing with injuries. So that's a game that I think the Chiefs should have won, and they didn't. And I think that this whole notion of them really being this team where, even if they don't take that up to another gear, they'll win in the end. I think we saw here in a pretty big regular season game. I mean, these two teams could meet in the playoffs come January. I think it finally caught up with them. I think it exposed some weaknesses too, especially on the defensive side of the ball for them. That offense, they put up 35 points. Usually that wins you games in the NFL. And clearly that defense didn't do its part. The Ravens, credit to them, they pull it out in the end. And so, I think that this shows AFC is a little more wide open this year. It shows in the standings. There's 2-0 teams in the AFC, and they're the Raiders and Broncos. Will those teams be there at the end of the season in the playoff hunt? I could see the Raiders maybe. Broncos, I think, will fall off. But a lot of teams are 1-1 right now, and I think that's a product of some of the things that we've talked about before. I think it's going to be a fun season here with teams that, a little more parity in the AFC than I think a lot of people anticipated.
Well, I think if Kansas City doesn't fumble the ball at the end of the game, not saying they win the game because obviously there was a lot of time left for the Ravens to come back, but I mean, that was a huge turnover, literally costing the game. But yeah, I agree with you, Robert. It's the Kansas City, their defense definitely needs to play better. But we'll see what happens with that. Justin, your thoughts on week 3? I'm sorry, week 2. My bad.
I'll save some thoughts on the Chiefs for when we discuss their game in a few minutes. I will say, while the games have been very entertaining, there's one area that is driving me insane, and I could have predicted it. We did predict it before the season, and that is this taunting nonsense where refs are inserting themselves into games, because a bunch of old white guys who are on the competition committee are offended because players like to show a little too much emotion, guys that they're like Chris, they're a little old school, blah, blah, blah. The Mike Florios of the world, who's apparently afraid of all out brawls breaking out during the game, something that maybe you see once every 5 years, if that, kind of chasing that boogeyman that doesn't really exist. But I think that once again, the NFL is stepping on its own toes, stepping on its own feet, tripping over its own feet, I think is the actual saying. Because it has a great product, and yet it continually does things to upset the viewer or take away from what makes the product so great. I don't want to see Jerome Boger, okay? When I'm watching a nationally televised game, I don't want to see him. I don't want to hear from him. I don't want to hear from Sean Hockley explaining rules. That's the thing, is like these officials become stars or known people because they're making so many calls, and the taunting is just unnecessary. Like, how many times do we come on here and talk about rules and interpretations and how this is unclear, that's unclear, and they decided to insert this taunting nonsense, which was already part of the rule book, but they really just wanted to enforce it to the upteenth degree. It's just another subjective thing that you're telling officials to look at when they can't even get right the normal calls. I think the NFL went in a terrible direction with this directive to enforce the taunting that I don't think was a big problem. I guess I'm just not sensitive, but you're not doing your product a favor when you're taking away time from the people who we're all there to see. Okay, I don't want to see Craig Rolstad. I want to see Patrick Mahomes. Okay, so I'm fairly confident that in a month we won't be talking about this much, because that's just the way the NFL does things, where they over-enforce a certain emphasis for 2-3 weeks, and then everyone pisses and moans about it. And then it's like, okay, we'll slow our roll. We kind of made the point that we wanted to. But it just seems so unnecessary. Like, if that's the way you're going to approach it, then just don't do it at all. Let's just start the season off like everyone wants. So that's kind of my takeaway is, can we just get back to playing football? Like, that's the one great thing about 2020, is that the refs took themselves out of the game. There was record lows and pretty much all penalties. They weren't calling holding every other play, and it was a great product. So let's get back to that. Let's stop inserting officials into the outcomes of games. It's not necessary. That's not who we came to see.
Okay. All right, let's get to the picks. And Justin, these are your picks, right? These are your games.
They are, and I hope you have the updated lines that I sent about.
I do have them.
Awesome.
So Kansas City at the Los Angeles Chargers. Kansas City favored by 6.5. Like we've talked about Kansas City, Robert mostly, and the Chargers. They easily could have won that game against Dallas last week. You could argue they should have won that game last week against Dallas, but mistakes, penalties. I think this week they get it cleaned up. They're playing, as I like to say, a familiar cliche, a familiar divisional foe. I don't think the Chargers win the game per se, but I like the 6.5. So I'll take the Chargers to cover the 6.5. I think they lose by 6 or 3 points. I think they keep it close. Could they win? Oh, absolutely, they could win. But I think they lose by less than 6.5. So I'm going with the Chargers to cover. Go ahead, Justin.
Well, I think the Chiefs pretty clearly got exposed in what their weakness is, which is teams that can run the ball. And I don't think the Chargers have that kind of offense to really expose them in that way. They're a passing offense. I think they're just not built to beat the Chiefs. I mean, granted, they played the Chiefs tough last year. Justin Herbert's first start of his career came against the Chiefs, I think week 2 or week 3 last year, when the whole Tyrod getting his lung punctured by the team doctor thing happened. And that was a close game that went in overtime, and the Chiefs ended up winning. So there is a path here for the Chargers. There is a history of them, keeping it close with the Chiefs, but I just have a hard time seeing the Chiefs after I don't think they took last week's game against the Ravens with the utmost seriousness, because that was just kind of a game where the Ravens obviously had circled on their calendar. I think this is a divisional matchup, and the Chiefs are home, not to institute a sheerism, but I just think they'll win this game by a touchdown. At some point, I commended the Chargers last week for having a good offense that didn't necessarily show up in terms of points. Well, at some points, you're going to have to score 28, 30 points to win a game, and especially this week. So if they don't do a better job of getting the ball in the end zone, they don't stand a chance. So I'll take the Chiefs to cover and win by at least a touchdown.
Robert?
The Chiefs have not been reliable in these situations when you're looking at it from a purely sports betting standpoint. I'm sick of trying to figure out this team and pick them in these situations. I will take the Chargers to cover here. I think the Chiefs win, but I think it's going to be another one of these close games that it comes down to, maybe a field goal, or, it's a 4-point game and there's a turnover that goes the Chiefs' way or something. I think it's just this team's nature, and I think part of it is how they're built. If you play the game the right way, you can hang with them. And I think the Chargers, especially after last week, to Justin's point, you look at that game against the Cowboys, and they made some mistakes in that one. And I think when you go back and look at it, yeah, they probably should have won that game. But this is a team that last year in September, and these September games are wild cards. With how that game played out, and of course it was in LA last year, but the Chiefs won by a field goal, and you could argue the Chargers should have won that game. I think it was a product of bad coaching that they didn't. So I think it'll be a close game this year. I think the Chiefs win, but I do see the Chargers keeping it close.
All right, our next game is the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Los Angeles Rams. Buccaneers are 1.5-point favorites on the road. I'll take the Rams in this game. I mean, the Rams home dogs. I mean, look, I think if there's any team that's got a defense that can match up against the Buccaneers, I think it's the Rams. The question is, can they score enough points? The Bucs obviously have a very good defense, no doubt about that. I think the Rams can. I like the Rams to win this game. I mean, it's a 1.5-point spread. So yeah, I'm going with the Rams. I mean, like I said, I think that this is going to be the first game we see at SoFi Stadium where the Rams truly have a home field advantage. I think LA is going to be at buzz with obviously Tom Brady playing his first game in Los Angeles. So that place is going to be packed. And I like the Rams to win this game and definitely cover the 1.5. Go ahead, Robert.
This is a tough one. The Rams have looked solid in the first 2 weeks. I thought the game against the Colts last week, certainly, I think there was a red flag there that the Colts haven't looked very good this year. And if you're the Rams in that NFC, and especially the division that they play in, you should be whooping teams like that, not letting them keep the game close. I'm riding with the Bucs here. I don't see, I get that, the Rams have Aaron Donald. I get that they have Jalen Ramsey. I think that they definitely have a defense that can make some plays. But look, the way that Brady has been operating so far, on the offensive side of the ball, I think the Bucs, really haven't missed a beat. It's the defense that has been a little shaky here in the early going. You look back at that Atlanta game. I think that really it was the defense that allowed Atlanta to get back in that game. Of course, it was also the defense that put it away again. And then, of course, against Dallas in week 1. I think the defense has to play better. But at the end of it, I do like the Bucs in this one. I think they win by a touchdown in this one.
Justin?
So this has been interesting because this line basically flipped. I mean, when I sent out the email Sunday night or Monday, the Rams were 1.5 or 1 point favorites. So obviously a lot of people are putting their money on the Bucs. Understandably so, defending Super Bowl champs, obviously. But they haven't looked like some dominant team over the first 2 weeks. And they played two teams that I don't think we took very seriously coming into the season. I mean, the Cowboys easily could have beat them week 1. Cowboys had a lead late in that game. Tom Brady had to once again do some late game magic to pull that one out. And then the Falcons made that a 3-point game. And then Matt Ryan kind of made 2 dumb decisions and it led to 2 defensive touchdowns, which is not something even a defense like the Buccaneers can count on week to week. So you look at 2 games that the Buccaneers easily could be probably 1-1, maybe. I wouldn't say they'd be 0-2. Falcons were hitting above their weight class a little bit, but they have not been the dominant team that maybe we all expected and that they're being perceived as through 2 weeks. Their defense has not looked as good as I think we all expected. Vice versa, Robert, I hear you on how the Rams should have crushed the Colts. But again, that's the result of a fluky special teams touchdown where the Rams have a punt block at their own 1 yard line that gets brought in for a touchdown. I think that game was not as close as the final score indicated. So for me, I think the Buccaneers, they're going to lose at some point. Why not this week? The Rams are, I think, a very solid team. That's a home underdog. So I'll just take those points and I'll pick the Rams to win this one.
All right. Our next game, Justin's Green Bay Packers coming off their first win of the season Monday night against the Lions. Going out to San Francisco, they are 3.5 point underdogs to the Niners. The Niners quietly, I thought everybody thought this team was going to have a quarterback controversy and, we haven't really gotten that yet. And they've quietly played good football. And the Packers, look, we know enough about the Packers. I wouldn't have been writing them off after 0-1. Every team has a clunker. It happens. The Packers are still one of the best teams in the league, no doubt about it. But that being said, they're going out west. It's a short week. Yeah, go ahead and make some jokes, Robert. I like the Niners to cover the 3.5. I think they're going to win by 6. It's not going to be a blowout by any means, but I think the Niners win by 6. They'll cover the 3.5. That's who I like in this game. Justin, you're up.
I'm sorry, but this is a disrespectful line to a team that's made back-to-back NFC championships. I'm sorry. If you want to trust Jimmy Garoppolo, by all means, go ahead. This is not the 49ers team from 2 years ago. There's no Richard Sherman. This is not a good secondary. Nick Bosa is still, he's coming off an ACL injury. I think that takes some time to really get back in the swing of things. I don't think he's the player he was 2 years ago. That offense or defensive line just as a whole, not the suffocating dominant group that it was 2 years ago. And that offense, there's just some weird stuff going on. Like Brandon Ayuk, who's their first round pick 2 years or, in 2020, he's not playing at all. George Kittle has been kind of absent from the offense the first 2 weeks. He hasn't done anything. I think he had 14 yards last week receiving. And Jimmy Garoppolo is a check down Charlie. Now, granted, I'm a little worried at what Kyle Shanahan's going to do to this Packers defense that really has only showed up for one half so far in 2 games. But I just have a lot more confidence that the Packers are going to be able to go score for score with the 49ers. And I have more faith that Aaron Rodgers is going to make a big play instead of Jimmy Garoppolo. And keep in mind, the Niners also don't have Raheem Mostert. He's out for the year. They're down to their 4th string running back. As good as Kyle Shanahan is at his job, at some point you're going to feel the effects of that. If this was 2.5 point line. The Niners were favored. Fine, whatever. They're the home team, but 3.5 is too much for my liking. So I'm going to take the Packers.
Of course you are. Robert.
My thing about the Niners is when you look at their resume so far this season, they won that game against the Lions, and really that defense, let the Lions back in that game. The Lions had no business being in that game, but really poured it on at the end, made it a one possession game. That was a red flag to me that this Niners defense isn't the Niners defense that it was a couple years ago. And then last week we saw that game against the Eagles, 17-11, I think it was. And, I get it that, it's on the road, you can make all the excuses you want. You can make all the excuses you want about the Detroit game, but these are teams that you would think that a Niners team that I think a lot of people would agree is superior to those two teams wouldn't have been in one possession games with the likes of the Eagles and the Lions. After the Packers bounce back, I don't care about your short week, talk there. Look, Aaron Rodgers got going, Aaron Jones got going. I think that the way that they used him was spectacular, really, really throwing off the defense, a few touchdown passes to him. I thought that was just a great team effort there. They did the right things on the offensive side of the ball, and then the defense, once Kevin King decided to show up a little bit, they looked certainly better than they have. So I like the Packers here. I think that they will exercise their demons, with respect to the Niners. The Niners don't have the running game that they had in past years that really torched the Packers defense. So I'm not worried about the Niners offense here, and their defense has been shaky. So I'll ride the reigning MVP.
All right, our last game, the Seattle Seahawks at the Minnesota Vikings. Seahawks are a 1.5 point favorite. Originally I was going to go with the Vikings in this game. I figured, Vikings coming off a bad loss, they're home. They're not that bad, but, I started thinking about it a little bit more. And, Seattle, to me, they're a much better team than the Vikings up and down both sides of the football. And, I haven't picked a home dog yet. So this is the one I'm picking. I'm going with Seattle to cover the 1.5. It's only 1.5. They'll win by a field goal, probably, maybe more. I think the Vikings are the kind of team, it's like, they should be better than they are, but they just can't seem to put it together, and bad things happen to them, like, the missed field goal last week. I just think they find a way to lose this game. Kirk Cousins throws a pick six or something. They find a way to lose. Russell Wilson finds a way to win. I'm going with Seattle to cover the 1.5. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, this game to me, the Vikings, another field goal disaster, and then Seattle choking away that game against the Titans. I mean, if you said that the Seahawks were going to be up 2 touchdowns against the Titans on their home turf and lose the game, I would have been stunned, and that's exactly what happened. I think Seattle bounces back here. I think that they're just too good. That defense is shaky, but the offense, certainly can pose problems for opposing teams. It's Russell Wilson's season, Mr. September, as Ritz nicknamed him last week. I just think that Seattle will bounce back here with a win over against a Vikings team that, they obviously have some talent here, an okay defense, on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously they have Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, but, I just think that in the end, with this spread too, pretty close, I think Seattle can win by at least a field goal.
Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. This is really the matchup of, two teams that blew games last week that they probably should have won. Really, the Vikings have been going on 2 straight weeks of blowing games they should have won. There's no reason they should have lost to the Bengals, despite being on the road 2 weeks ago. I guess it's one of those games I just don't really know what to think of either team. So in that case, I'll take the points and I'll take the Vikings. But yeah, I can see a formula like you see how Derrick Henry just took over that game last week. Dalvin Cook isn't like quite Derrick Henry, but he's still that top 2 running back in the league. And I think he can have a similar effect. And the Vikings are home. They have a lot of talent on offense. One of these games, they're going to figure it out, I think. Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, that's a really solid group. The Seahawks, it seems like these teams play every single year, and the Seahawks kind of have the Vikings number a little bit. But I guess I'll just go with the home team and the points. I'll take the Vikings. I don't feel good about it.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I'll tell you, looking at our picks, I mean, we're all over the place. I mean, there's no game that all three of us agree on. It's 2-1 basically on every game. So, and it's different, Robert and me on one game and Robert, Justin on another. And it's just, this is going to be a fun week to see how our standings continue to shake out as the season goes along. So it's
not a single game we all agreed on. So one of you guys is going to look bad. Won't be me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. So, all right,
I'm
gentlemen.
1-7. It can't get any worse than this.
1-7. I know.
I looked back at our picks because I have them in Google Drive, and I've tried to find 2-week stretches where, because usually what happens is we'll have bad weeks,
Right.
picking 4 random games, we all have them, you might go 0-4 or 1-3 or something. But usually what happens is we bounce back after that. I went back through and I couldn't find a 2-week stretch in past seasons where we were this bad. Usually it's, you're 1-3 one week and the next week you get 3 or 4 right, or at least, have it. I have, speaking for myself, I've never, picked games this bad, but that shows it's been a, bit of an unpredictable season so far. You look at, the standings and, there's some interesting teams that are 2-0 right now that, probably won't be in the playoff conversation. And then you look at some of the 1-1 teams, and even 1 or 2 of those 0-2 teams out there, and they're certainly not playing up to snuff so far. So it's been an interesting season. I think again, it speaks to just how the NFL, the Septembers anyway, are really kind of a warming up period for these teams. I think business will pick up in October, but it's just right now, anything can happen with these NFL slates.
The road underdogs are crushing it so far this year, and that's what's crazy. I mean, if usually the home team is the safe pick, so to speak, or usually you're going to favor the home team in most cases. But road underdogs are just getting it done at an incredible rate, and if you're a bettor, and well, I'll tell you, I'm glad I'm not doing it right now. It is bonkers. So. All right, guys, it's been fun. Appreciate it. It's good to see everybody. Folks, thanks for joining us. We appreciate that too. And we'll see you next week. Enjoy the games.